I stepped off the plane, my fingers still laced with Matthew's, the warm Mediterranean air wrapping around me like a long-awaited embrace. This trip was supposed to be our escape, our chance to finally breathe, to shake off the weight of routine and rediscover each other. I had spent months dreaming about it. Candlelit dinners in hidden alleyway cafes, lazy mornings tangled in white hotel sheets, stolen kisses on cobblestone streets. And now, here we were, ready to turn dreams into memories. At least that's what I thought. Matthew was different the moment we landed. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. He was probably just tired from the flight. But as the days passed, his distance grew impossible to ignore. He kept glancing at his phone, his smiles never quite reaching his eyes. "Just an old friend from college," he said when I asked who he was texting so much. Then came the sudden errands, the mysterious walks alone, the rushed explanations. "You wouldn't be interested in this place," he'd say, brushing a quick kiss against my forehead before disappearing for hours. Still, I forced myself to push the doubts aside. I wasn't going to let overthinking ruin this trip. The first country was everything I had hoped for. Romantic dinners by candlelight, stolen laughter under the soft glow of street lamps, the sweet hum of adventure in the air. I convinced myself that we were just adjusting to being away from home, that soon enough everything would fall into place. But then, in the second country, something shifted. It happened so casually, so unexpectedly, that for a moment, I didn't even process what I was looking at. I was unpacking my suitcase in our new hotel, shaking out a dress when Matthew's bag tipped over, sending a few of his things tumbling onto the bed. I reached to put them back, his wallet, his passport, a phone I didn't recognize. My breath caught. I knew Matthew's phone. I had seen it 100 times. This one was different. My fingers hovered over it for a second too long. A sick feeling curled in my stomach, that deep, unshakable instinct that something was wrong. My hands moved before my mind could stop them. The screen lit up as I swiped. No passcode. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. And then, there they were. Photos. Dozens of them. Matthew, standing too close to a woman I didn't recognize. Another picture. Him laughing over drinks, her hand resting on his arm like it belonged there. Another, his smirk, that same damn smirk, but a different woman this time. My mind reeled, flipping through image after image, each one driving a knife deeper into my chest. Different countries, different women. And Matthew in every single one, looking like he didn't have a wife waiting for him back at the hotel. I felt the room sway, my vision tunneling as I stared at the proof of my worst nightmare. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall, hear it shatter the way my heart just had. But I didn't. Instead, I forced myself to breathe, to stay still. A slow, chilling realization settled over me. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time slip. Matthew had planned this. And suddenly I wasn't just heartbroken. I was furious. I sat there for what felt like hours, the phone still in my hand, my breath coming in slow, controlled exhales. I refused to cry. Not here. Not now. My pulse hammered in my ears, but beneath the shock, beneath the betrayal, something else stirred. Something colder. He thought I wouldn't find out. He thought he could play the doting husband while collecting his little souvenirs along the way. I glanced at the bathroom door, still closed. Matthew was inside, oblivious. I had minutes, maybe seconds. My fingers moved fast, quicker than I knew they could, flipping through his hidden gallery, memorizing every detail, the way his hand rested on their waists, the way they leaned into him like they were the only woman in his world, the timestamps, the locations. He had been doing this since the moment we landed. While I had been planning surprise date nights, he had been sneaking off to another woman's bed. I should have confronted him right then and there. I should have stormed into that bathroom, thrown the phone at him, and watched him scramble for an excuse. But as I stared at the evidence of his betrayal, a different thought took root, curling its way through my mind like a whisper. Confrontation would end this too easily. A fight, some yelling, a pathetic apology, maybe even a tear or two if he was feeling particularly performative. No, he didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve to walk away with nothing but a guilty conscience. I wasn't going to leave. Not yet. I was going to make him pay. I barely slept that night. I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to the slow, steady rhythm of his breathing. How dare he sleep so soundly? How dare he act like nothing had happened, like this wasn't just another stop on his twisted little tour of deception? My fingers twitched with the urge to wake him, to shove the phone in his face and demand he explain himself. But I swallowed it down. Not yet. Instead, I studied him, really studied him, for the first time in years. The sharp angles of his face, the lines at the corners of his eyes. Had they always been there? Had I been too blinded by love, by routine, to notice the man he was becoming? Or had he always been this way and I had simply refused to see it? The memories started surfacing, unbidden. The excuses, the sudden late nights, the way he'd glance at his phone and smirk at messages I never got to read. This trip wasn't an accident. It wasn't a spontaneous act of romance. It was a carefully laid plan, a perfect cover for his sickness. I turned onto my side, facing him. He looked peaceful, relaxed, like a man who had everything under control. My stomach twisted, a slow-burning nausea that spread through my entire body. I had spent years believing I knew this man, trusting him with everything I had. And now, as I watched him sleep, I realized the truth. I didn't know him at all. By morning, the weight of my discovery sat heavy on my chest, pressing down with every breath. But I played my part. When Matthew stirred awake, stretching lazily, I smiled. When he kissed my forehead and murmured, "Morning, babe." Like nothing had changed, I kissed him back. My hands didn't tremble. My voice didn't waver. I had always thought I was terrible at hiding my emotions, but now I realized something new about myself. I could pretend, and I could do it well. We spent the morning wandering through cobbled streets, the sun warming our skin, the scent of fresh bread drifting from open cafe doors. It was the kind of morning I had dreamed about when I planned this trip. And yet, every glance he stole at his phone, every moment he pulled away just slightly when I reached for his hand, fed the fire growing inside me. I replayed the images over and over in my mind, each one searing into my memory, each one fueling the storm inside me. He thought he had won. He thought he was clever, untouchable, orchestrating his little game while I remained blissfully unaware. I let him think it. I let him wrap his arm around my shoulders, let him whisper in my ear about the romantic dinner he had planned for us that night. And all the while, a new plan was forming in my mind, precise and deliberate. I wasn't going to fall apart. I wasn't going to confront him in a fit of rage. No, that was exactly what he expected. What he didn't expect, what he could never see coming, was the quiet, patient unraveling of his entire world. I watched him as he sipped his coffee, the morning light catching the gold band on his finger, our wedding ring, a symbol that meant nothing to him. How many times had he taken it off? How many times had he slipped it into his pocket before meeting another woman, before whispering to her the same lies he once whispered to me? The thought alone could have shattered me. But instead, it sharpened my resolve. He thought I was naive. He thought he was getting away with it. But the truth was, I was already 10 steps ahead of him. I just had to be patient. So I let the day unfold like any other. I laughed at his jokes. I took pictures of the landmarks we visited. I let him believe he was still in control. But inside, I was collecting every piece of his betrayal, carefully stitching together the final masterpiece of his undoing. That evening, as I slipped into the dress he loved, the one he always said made me look breathtaking, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a different woman staring back. She wasn't heartbroken. She wasn't desperate. She was waiting. Because I knew something he didn't. This trip wasn't going to end the way he planned. I could feel the weight of my plan settling into place, each detail clicking together like the final pieces of a puzzle. Matthew still had no idea. He walked beside me through the bustling city streets, his hand grazing the small of my back, his lips brushing my temple in what should have been a tender gesture. But all I felt was revulsion. It was almost laughable. How easy it was for him to play the loving husband, how effortlessly he switched between roles. I played my part just as well, maybe even better. I smiled at him, leaned into him, let my fingers linger on his arm just a second longer than usual. I even initiated a kiss, soft and lingering, letting him think I was hopelessly in love, that this trip was everything I had ever wanted. And he fell for it. Completely. "Thinking about extending the trip?" he asked, watching me with that familiar smirk, the one I had once adored. I let out a small laugh, tucking my hair behind my ear. "Maybe. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of all these beautiful places." I meant every word. I was going to extend my time in Europe. But I wouldn't be doing it with him. I stole glances at him as we walked, memorizing his every move, every glance at his phone, every excuse he made to step away. It was almost insulting how predictable he was. He thought he was being subtle, slipping away under the guise of checking something real quick. But I already knew what he was doing. And now, I was collecting my own evidence. I became a shadow, silent, unnoticed, watching. When he slipped away that afternoon, I followed. He thought he was clever, thought he had perfected the art of deception, but his carelessness made my job easy. I trailed him through the narrow streets, my heart steady, my mind razor sharp. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just cold, calculated observation. He turned into a cafe, one of those cozy little spots tucked away from the main roads. I lingered outside, pretending to scroll through my phone while my eyes tracked him through the glass. And then, there she was. A brunette, early 30s, dressed in effortless elegance. She beamed when she saw him. And he? He leaned in, murmuring something that made her laugh, his hand resting casually on her knee. I took the shot. The camera shutter was silent, discreet. One picture, then another, then another. I captured the moment from every angle, each frame a nail in the coffin of his deceit. It was almost absurd how easily he gave himself away. I had always imagined betrayal to be tangled in secrecy, in cryptic messages and hushed voices. But there he was, out in the open, confident that I was none the wiser. I had seen enough. I turned and walked away before my presence could register, before he could even sense a shift in the air. There was still work to be done, still more to collect. But the foundation was set. Now, it was only a matter of time. That night, I played the perfect wife. I let Matthew wrap his arms around me in bed, let him press a lingering kiss to my shoulder as if he hadn't just spent the afternoon entertaining another woman. I turned to face him, smiling just enough to make him believe everything was as it should be. And he believed it. Of course he did. His arrogance was his weakness. He thought I was too in love, too blind to see the truth. He didn't notice the way I mirrored his habits now, how I excused myself to take a call, how I laughed softly at messages he assumed were from friends back home. He didn't know I had access to his hidden phone, that I had transferred every single one of his sick little trophies to my own device. I spent the next few days adding to my collection. More photos, more timestamps, more proof. I didn't just capture his lies, I documented them. Each secret text he sent, each new woman he entertained. I made sure I had everything I needed, down to the smallest detail. And then, I started setting the stage. I suggested a grand finale to our trip, a final stop in one of Europe's most beautiful cities, a place neither of us had been before. Somewhere extravagant, somewhere that would make for the perfect ending to our so-called romantic getaway. He agreed without hesitation, probably thinking it was another opportunity for him to slip away unnoticed, but he had no idea. The final act was already written, and he was walking straight into it, the final country, the last destination on what Matthew thought was his triumphant world tour of deceit. But for me, it was something else entirely. This was the place where the curtains would fall, where the performance would end. Not for me, but for him. I had planned every detail meticulously. The restaurant was perfect, high-end, elegant, filled with the kind of people who would whisper and judge the moment something scandalous unfolded. It was the kind of place where reputations were both built and destroyed. I had made the reservation myself, selecting a table right in the center where all eyes would be on us. That evening I took my time getting ready, slipping into the dress he loved. The one he always said made me unforgettable. I let him watch as I fastened my earrings, as I smoothed my hair, as I smiled at him like a woman deeply in love. His gaze lingered on me, admiration in his eyes, and for a brief second, a bitter thought crossed my mind. Did he ever look at those other women this way? Did he ever make them feel like they were the only ones, just like he had done to me? But it didn't matter. Not anymore. Because tonight, he wasn't the one in control. The restaurant buzzed with quiet elegance, the soft clinking of silverware, the low murmur of conversations, the warm glow of candlelight casting shadows against polished marble. It was the kind of place where people came to celebrate love, to toast to anniversaries, to make promises they intended to keep. The irony was almost poetic. Matthew reached for my hand across the table, his thumb brushing against my skin. "To us," he said, raising his champagne glass. His eyes gleamed with satisfaction, utterly convinced that he had won, that I was still the clueless, adoring wife, hanging on to his every word. I raised my glass in return, letting a slow smile spread across my lips. "To us," I echoed, though the words felt different on my tongue. He had no idea. I placed my phone on the table, fingers resting lightly over the screen, and with a single swipe, the slideshow began. The massive screen across the restaurant, the one usually reserved for displaying breathtaking city views and scenic travel footage, flickered. Then, the first image appeared, a photo of Matthew, smiling, laughing, his arm draped over a woman who was not his wife. A ripple moved through the restaurant. Someone gasped. Someone else turned, their expression shifting from idle curiosity to quiet horror. And then, the next image. Another woman. Another city. The same smirk. Matthew's glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the table. Time seemed to slow. The room, once filled with the pleasant hum of conversation, now sat in stunned silence. All eyes were on the screen, on the grotesque parade of Matthew's infidelities playing out in real time. One by one, the images cycled, different women, different countries, the same charming, deceitful smile. Matthew lurched forward, his face drained of all color. "Isabella," he choked out, his voice barely above a whisper. His hand scrambled for my phone, but I was faster. I tilted the screen toward me, ensuring the final blow landed just as I intended. I lifted my glass again, a slow, deliberate movement. "I just thought everyone should see how much of a world traveler you really are," I said, my voice light, almost sweet. The kind of voice you use when you're sharing a delightful little secret. A murmur spread through the restaurant, hushed whispers turning into a wave of scandalized disbelief. A woman at the next table covered her mouth, shaking her head. A couple near the bar exchanged wide-eyed glances. Someone pulled out their phone, recording, capturing, preserving the moment that would follow Matthew forever. He was frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a man grasping for words that would not come. He reached for me, desperation in his eyes. "Isabella, please, let's—" I didn't let him finish. With a steady hand, I pulled off my wedding ring, the metal suddenly feeling foreign, meaningless against my skin. I dropped it into his untouched champagne, watching it sink beneath the golden bubbles. Then, without another word, I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked away. Behind me, Matthew's world collapsed. The night air was crisp as I stepped outside the restaurant, leaving behind the wreckage of Matthew's carefully constructed lies. The sounds of the city pulsed around me, cars humming past, the chatter of people who had no idea they had just witnessed the public downfall of a man who thought he was untouchable. I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with the cool air, and for the first time in years, I felt weightless. No more doubts, no more wondering, no more being the fool in someone else's game. I walked without any real direction, my heels clicking against the pavement, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. A part of me expected guilt to creep in, expected regret to whisper that maybe I had gone too far. But it never came. Instead, there was only a quiet satisfaction, a steady hum of rightness settling into my bones. Then, my phone buzzed. I pulled it from my purse, already knowing who it would be. Matthew. The preview of his message stared back at me. "Please, let's talk. I made a mistake." A mistake. I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. A mistake was forgetting an anniversary. A mistake was missing a flight. But what Matthew had done? That was not a mistake. That was a choice. 1,000 tiny choices, each one leading him closer to his downfall. And now, it was my choice what happened next. I stared at the message for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the screen. Please, let's talk. I made a mistake. The words meant nothing. They were empty, weightless, just another string of syllables designed to pull me back in. If I replied, he would twist the truth. He would plead, bargain, manipulate. He'd remind me of our history, of the life we built together, of the good times, as if any of it could erase what he had done. I exhaled slowly, then did the only thing left to do. I deleted the message. The moment it disappeared, a strange sensation washed over me. Liberation. Pure, unfiltered freedom. It wasn't just about Matthew anymore. It was about everything I had allowed myself to believe, every compromise, every excuse, every time I had ignored my instincts for the sake of preserving something that no longer deserved to exist. I lifted my head, looking at the city around me with fresh eyes. I wasn't going home. Not yet. Instead, I turned toward a cafe at the corner of the street, its outdoor tables bathed in the warm glow of streetlights. I slipped inside, ordered a coffee, and settled into a seat by the window. The world outside moved on, unconcerned with my past, unbothered by my story. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't an ending. This was a beginning. The first sip of coffee was rich and smooth, the warmth spreading through me like a quiet reassurance. I let myself savor it, feeling the weight of the past few weeks dissolve with every passing second. Outside, life moved on. Lovers strolling hand in hand, an elderly couple laughing over a shared dessert, a group of friends toasting to something worth celebrating. And then there was me, alone, but not lonely. For so long, I had defined myself by what I was to Matthew, his wife, his partner, his supposed equal. But sitting here, halfway across the world, untethered from his lies, I realized I had no idea who I was outside of him. That wasn't terrifying. That was exhilarating. I pulled out my phone, not to check for messages from him, but to book something else entirely. A train ticket, a new city, a place I had never been before, one that had nothing to do with him. No memories tainted by his betrayal, no ghosts of the past lurking in the corners. As I confirmed the purchase, a smile tugged at my lips. For the first time in a long time, my life belonged solely to me, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take me next.